This week in CIST 1602, we'll look at Chapter 8, Security Management Models. All right, so this chapter is going to give you, it's going to train you in the use of security management models and access control models. You're going to learn about the use of security architect models, as well as different certifications and accreditations available in security. Finally, you're going to learn about the security management models that's both proprietary and freely available. First, we'll look at what is an InfoSec framework. An InfoSec framework is a framework that is the outline of the plans intended for security control. Now, there are many different InfoSec models and standards that are going to exist. One way to select a methodology is to adapt or adopt an existing security management model, or maybe a set of practices. Now, keep in mind that because each InfoSec environment is unique, each one is going to be different. You may need to modify or adapt portions of several different frameworks. So you find what's going to work best for your organization, and what may be best for one organization will not precisely fit another. The InfoSec blueprint, that's a detailed plan for the complete design, selection, and implementation of all subsequent security controls. This includes your InfoSec policies, the security education and training programs, and the technological controls that you want to implement. It also includes the sequence steps and plan timeframes for each component. Now, to generate a usable security blueprint, a lot of organizations are going to look at established security frameworks, models, and practices. Some of these models may be proprietary and only available for a fee. Others may be a little bit more cheaper, less expensive. Keep in mind that your chosen model should be flexible, scalable, robust, and also sufficiently detailed. Now, another way you can go about creating your security blueprint is to look at the paths taken by other organizations. What worked for that organization? Now, keep in mind, what worked for one organization may not work for yours. So you can look at other security blueprints and determine how could this be applied to your organization. One thing we talk about is benchmarking. That's the comparison of two related measurements. This can be just both internal and external comparison. We talk about internal benchmarking. This is known as baseline. So in here, you compare the organization's performance at some defined state against the current or expected performance. External benchmarking involves comparing one's organizational results against another similar organization. So you can use the baseline, for example, to determine what are the behavior of your computers. I had a professor one time, he explained that his definition of a secured system is a system that did exactly what it was supposed to do and nothing else. You get this definition of what a system should do based off the baselining. Okay, so this is how a computer should behave. This is how part of your organization should behave and what it should not be doing. If something is going outside of that, it's going against the expected performance. Now, InfoSec professionals, they use security models as an outline for the design of an organization's entire planned security program, or it can also be used as a starting point to where you can go in and customize, create a customized version of a plan. There's a lot of different models you can use. One of the most widely referenced will be the Information Technology Code of Practice for Information Security Management. It's also, you have the iOS-IEC 27002, and that was originally created to offer guidance for management for security purposes. The NIST security models, it's a collection of InfoSec management practices. This approach includes a broad array of documentation that covers broad topical areas of InfoSec management. It does have two notable advantages by using the NIST security model. They are publicly available at no charge. They have been available for some time. They've been completely reviewed and updated by government and industry professionals. The COBIT, the Control Objective for Information and Related Technology. This also gives you advice for implementing controls and control objects for InfoSec. This is an IT governance framework, and the supporting tool set allows managers to bridge the gap between control requirements, technical issues, and business risk. The COBIT was created in 1992 by the Information Security Audit and Control Association and the IT Governance Institute. What this does, COBIT enables clear policy development and good practices for IT control throughout the organization. The Committee of Sponsoring Organizations, it's a U.S. private sector initiative that was formed in 1985. Its major objective is to identify the factors that cause fundamental financial reporting and make recommendations to reduce its incidents. This establishes a common definition of internal control standards and criteria against which companies and organizations can assess their control systems. Now, the committee's report has entered a practical usage as a standard of performance. It helps the organizations comply with the critical regulations like the Sarbanes-Oxley Act of 2002. ITIL, the Information Technology Infrastructure Library. This is a collection of methods and practices that are useful for managing the development and operation of information technology infrastructures. There are a series of books which is going to cover topics of IT management. There's a lot of IT related practices covered in this, so it can be tailored for different IT organizations. The Information Security Governance Framework, it's a managerial model. It's going to provide guidance in the development and implementation of organization information security structure. So it's recommendations for the development, documentation, and implementation of an InfoSec program that's going to be consistent with accepted security practices. Now, you should also be aware of these recommendations to establish clear, effective, and periodic reporting for InfoSec programs, along with regular evaluations to determine effectiveness of a InfoSec program. This is something that should be included in your framework. The core of the Information Security Governance Framework, it includes recommendations and responsibilities included for the board of directors, executives, senior management, and then also all employees. Security architect modules or models. These illustrate information security implementations that help an organization to quickly make improvements through adaptation. Now, some of these security architect modules are implemented into computers' hardware and software. Some are implemented as policies and practices, and some are going to be in both of them. Some of these will focus on the confidential information. Some are going to be looking at the integrity of the information as well. Trusted computer system evaluation criteria. This is an older DoD standard. It's going to define the criteria for accessing the access controls in the computer system. Now, this is a standard part of a larger set of standards that are known as the Rainbow Series. This will be the TC/SEC is going to be known as the Orange Book. This is considered the cornerstone of the Rainbow Series. It's called the Rainbow Series because it's the color coding that's used to uniquely identify each document. This was replaced by the common criteria in 2005, but you should still be aware of this and Understand that it does define a trusted computing base as the combination of all hardware, firmware, and software responsible for enforcing the security policy. So the security policy is going to refer to the rules of the configuration for a system rather than the managerial guidance document. Once again, the trusted computing base, this is made up of the hardware and software that's been implemented to provide security for the particular information system. Now, with the trusted computing base, you have a reference model. It's a conception object known as a reference model, and it's used to mediate across objects by subjects. So this is part of the system that manages access control. This is something that must be audited and reviewed regularly by system administrators. So make sure that it is functioning as is intended, and it does not have any unauthorized modification. Now, one of the big challenges in the TCB is the existence of covert channels. Covert channels are defined as the user of unauthorized or unintended methods of communication that may exist within the computer system. There are two different types of covert channels. You have strong storage channels and timing channels. Common criteria for information technology security evaluation. This is the successor to the SEC and the SEC as a result of several different countries to develop the common criteria. Now, some of the terminology that's inherent to common criteria is target of evaluation, or TOE. This is the system that's being evaluated. A protection profile, which is a user-generated specification for security requirements. Your security target is the document describing the TOE's security properties. The security functional requirements, it's a catalog of product security functions. And the evaluation assurance levels. That's the rating or grading of a TOE after it's been evaluated. So there's some of the terminology you should be aware of. All right, access controls regulate how users can make use of resources. All right, so we got 4 different processes of access control. You have obtaining the entity's identity, confirming the identity, determining what the identity can do, and then logging the actions of the entity. Now, this access control is going to be built on several key principles. One of them we've talked about in the past is the principle of least privilege. So you provide the users with the minimum amount of access necessary to perform their job. Need to know, it limits users to only information that are needed to perform their work. And the separations of duty. That's a task where a task may be broken down into multiple tasks that are being performed by different employees. So not one employee will be responsible for the entire task. Some categories of access control include directive, deterrent, preventative, detective, corrective, recovery, and compensating. All right. So in this, the directive will be where the employee's administrative controls, such as policy and training. It's designed to prescribe certain user behavior in the organization. The deterrent encourages or deters an incident. Preventative helps an organization avoid an incident. Detective will detect or identifies an incident or threat when an incident occurs. The corrective remedies a circumstance or mitigates damage done during an incident. Recovery restores operating conditions back to normal. And compensating resolves the shortcomings. Now we can also talk about a second approach that are described in the NIST Special Publication Series, where the catalogs controls are based on the operational impact of the organization. So in here we have the controls of management, where that's the controls that cover security processes designed by strategic planners. It's integrated into the organization's management practices and routinely used by security administrators to design, implement, and monitor other control systems. Then you have operational or administrative. That's controls that deal with the operational functions of security that have been integrated in a repeatable process of the organization. Finally, you have technical. These are controls that support the tactical portion of a security program. They've been implemented as reactive mechanisms to deal with the immediate needs of the organization as it responds to the realities of the technical environment. Some other types of controls may be mandatory access control. This is used in conjunction with sensitivity or classification levels to determine whether or not a user has access. So, for example, when a MAC is implemented, the user and data owners, they have limited control over access to information resources. So the data owners must classify the information assets for which they are responsible, and they review those classifications periodically. So one of the things when we look at this, we'll say like the U.S. government, they use a 3-level classification scheme for information. And this was something that was deemed to be the national security information defined in Executive Order 13-526. So the 3-level classification used in the U.S. government is confidential, secret, and top secret. So your organization may not use those classifications. They may use something, say, confidential or sensitive, maybe for official use only or internal use only, and then public for the information there. So non-discretionary controls, those are involving the use of either role-based controls or task-based controls. Role-based controls are tied to the role of a particular user, performance of their organization. Task-based are tied to a particular assignment or responsibility. Discretionary access controls, they are implemented at the option of the data users. In here, the user can allow general unrestricted access, or you can allow specific individuals to access certain resources. So this will be using their discretion. Some other forms of access control include content-dependent access control. So this is access to a specific set of information that may be dependent on its content. Constrained user interfaces, these maybe have the system designed specifically to restrict what information an individual can access, or maybe time-based isolation, where the information is limited by a time of day constraint. For example, they can only access the information for their working period and not after hours.